Hi everyone, today I want to show you how to replace a water pump on a 2015 model Suzuki Jimny. Just checking my battery charger. Battery went flat, car's been standing for a while. Let's start with the radiator cap. What next? Let me go fetch the long reach pliers to remove the spring clamps on the radiator hose. Let's first drain the water before I start removing pipes. Make sure you've got a 10-liter bucket. If you want to drain your water inside your garage, you can drain it into a 10-liter bucket. There won't be more than 6 liters of water inside the engine. At the bottom corner of the radiator, you will find this drain plug. You can just unscrew it a bit to drain the water, or take it out completely if you're in a hurry. Just be careful, you might end up splashing water all over the show. After water has been drained, you can now remove the spring clamp on the bottom radiator hose. I've used my long reach pliers. Makes the job easy, but you can also use a normal pliers. I used the back of my claw hammer, the plastic handle, to push the pipe off. There's a bend at the back. You just stick it into that bend and push it off the radiator. Now the fan cover. You will need a 10 spanner for that. That's two 6mm bolts. Just loosen it a bit with the spanner and then you can screw it out with your fingers. It's better to take those bolts out completely. Later on they might be in your way. Now the top hose. Just move that clamp, use the hammer again, the backside plastic handle, and push it off. Easy as that. Now I just moved that electrical cord far back as possible, and you can unplug your reservoir tank pipe. Leave it hanging there at the back. And then the top two bolts, that's 6mm bolts. I've used my 10mm socket there. Also that fan cowling, fan cover. Take those bolts out. You need to push the fan cover as far back as possible. When you pull the radiator out the top, you don't want that bottom pipe to get hooked to the fan cover. So yeah, just make sure the fan cover is as far back as possible. Now you can loosen the two bolts that holds the radiator. It's also 6 more bolts with my 10mm socket. That radiator comes out fairly easy. Once the bolts are out, you just pull it out the top. I lost my video there, I don't know what happened, but yeah, the radiator just pulls out the top. After that, you can now reach the tensioner bearing. There you'll need a 12mm socket. Loosen those two 12mm bolts. As soon as that tensioner bearing is loose, it's fairly easy to get your fan belt off. Some people try to replace fan belts with the radiator still in place. Trust me, you don't have space, you're going to end up hurt your hands. It's not a big job, just take out the radiator. Makes everything go so much easier. So now the other fan belt, you'll have to loosen that bracket now that's mounted to the head and to the alternator. That bracket has got a slot at the bottom that allows you to set the tension on your fan belt. At the bottom of the alternator is another screw, a swivel screw. It's also bolted to the engine. You'll have to loosen that bolt to allow the alternator to move freely. We'll go there now. Let's go to the bottom. There's that bolt that holds the alternator. Just loosen it a bit so that you can move the alternator backwards and forwards. Make sure it's nice and loose. You don't have to take that bolt out all the way. Now the alternator is nice and loose. Release the tension on the belt and pull it off. Now let's take off the fan. So this is a visco fan. While trying to lose the 10mm nuts there, the fan turns. So you can't hold the fan and loosen the nuts. You're going to have to use your water pump pliers and just grab the shaft at the back, and then you can loosen those 4 6mm nuts. Just loosen it a bit and then you can unscrew it with your fingers. There you go, now the fan can come off. Put it aside. Take the pulley off behind the fan. Now the water pump is in the clear, open. You can now easily loosen. There you go. You'll need a 12mm socket again to loosen all those bolts. Just loosen it with a socket 2 or 3 turns, and then you can turn the rest out with your fingers. Okay, now you can pull the water pump off just slightly, just to drain the bit of water that's still inside the pump. Have your bucket ready at the bottom for the water spillage. I'm just checking if I can see any damages, scratches or problems. Everything looks fine, all good. I'm using my putty knife just to take off the old gasket. Need to clean this surface properly. Now this bracket was in my way, decided to remove it. I then used the old carpet knife blade to get into the smaller areas, making sure I'm getting all that dirt out there. And I went and I fetched sponge in my wife's kitchen. She's not going to be happy about this, but it's not a train smash. I'll replace it. You must make 100% sure that surface is clean. You don't want to put your gasket sealer and assemble everything and then it's leaking again because something was dirty or wet or something, and you have to strip the radiator out and start all over again. Make sure it's clean. Also out of my wife's kitchen. She's gonna kill me. Make sure you get all the dust and dirt out there. You don't want dust or dirt or pieces of gasket to go into your radiator. Make sure, I saw a spot there, make sure it's clean. That's it, clean. There's actually nothing wrong with the water pump. The gasket that the previous guys used were actually, I think, a bad quality gasket, or they did something wrong there. But the gasket was actually leaking, not the water pump. So this water pump is actually in a very good condition. It's nice and tight. It looks clean. You see the water, if there was something wrong with the pump, the water would have come out that hole there, or that hole. That means when water comes out there, it means that seal in the inside is gone. But that's clean. It was actually just the gasket. So I'm just going to clean this one up nicely and put it back. No need to buy a new one. There it is, nice and clean. This pump is actually in a very good condition. Before I put my gasket sealer on the pump, I just need to make sure there's no water on that surfaces. You don't want to put that gasket sealer on top of water. So I took a bit of toilet paper because it sucks in the water quite well. So yeah, just make sure there's no water there. It's dry. This gasket maker, make sure you get every single area on the surface. Don't put it on too thick. Make sure it's thin and also not too thin. If it's too thick, when you tighten this water pump, it will peel out the sides and you'll have some of this gasket maker on the inside of your pump, and then that will come loose and go into your radiator. You don't want this gasket sealer inside your radiator. Just go clean my hands quickly. There you go. Put the bolts in. Make sure the pump is nice and tight. Now we can fit the fan. Fit the pulley first. Put your fan back and your 6mm nuts. Don't tighten it properly because that pulley is turning. You have to use your water pump pliers again to hold the shaft at the back and then tighten the nuts properly. There you go. Now the fan belt. The fan belt, put back the bracket. Use the hammer again just to put some tension on that alternator. Push it down, tighten it. This hammer handle came in quite useful. And don't forget about the bolt at the bottom of the alternator. Tighten that bolt again. Now the other fan belt. You see the tensioner pulley is still loose, so this one will be tensioned by that tensioner bearing. So I used my welding hammer. I've got an old welding hammer that fits nicely on top of that tensioner bearing underneath that bolt. So I could force it down and then tighten the bolts. That's it. Put a fair amount of tension on that belt and tighten it. There you go. Double check the belt tension, all fine. Tighten the center bolt. Now for the radiator. Sorry, the fan cover. The cowling bat, push it far back as possible, because when you slide the radiator down, that bottom pipe is going to catch it. remember to put back your drain plug. Battling a bit, this radiator doesn't want to go down. I went down there to check what's causing this thing to get stuck like this. I'll show you just now. There you go, it's in. There you go. While I'm down there, just check that drain plug again, it's tight, but there's the rubber. It's a rubber mounting on the radiator. It fits into that hole there for that on that bracket. So that didn't line up so nicely. I battled a bit with that, but got it in. Now I can fit the bolts. That screw didn't want to go in. Third attempt, it went in nicely. Now a fan cover. We got two 6mm bolts back and a fan cover. Here you go. Tighten it quickly. The 10mm socket. Put the water pipe back. And the spring clamp. Tighten the fan cover at the top quickly. 6mm bolts with a 10 socket. Make sure this is tight. Put the reservoir pipe back. Top water pipe back. Slide the spring clamps back into position. I used lukewarm water. That's not cold water, it was lukewarm, just to help the engine to heat up a little bit faster and for the thermostat to open quicker, so that I can properly bleed the radiator and the cooling system. So I fold it up. Then I started the car. So while the engine is idling, it will bleed through properly. Fill it up to the top, just give it some time so all the air can come out. Fill it up again, wait for the air to come out, fill it up again, wait for the air to come out, until there's no more bubbles or air in the water. Piece of toilet paper. Make sure all the air is out. Switch off the engine, check again, make sure there's no air. 100%. Radiator cap back, good to go. Let's go for a test drive. Come back, clean the workshop. My work is done here. Thank you for watching. Please like and subscribe and hit that notification button. Thanks a lot. Bye bye. Oh, please leave a comment